Good morning everybody. Dylan K. Johnson here. Welcome back to a new video. So today is going to be a very highly requested and long-awaited video, and that's going to be a full detailed review of the Rogue Fitness 50 cal lever arms. So I'm going to be covering all of my cons, all my pros and cons, all my thoughts and experiences having owned and used these consistently for a little over a year now. So without further ado, let's just kind of dive straight into it. Let's start things off by looking at the price, because that's going to be one of the biggest questions a lot of people have. And I'll say that right now, these things are not cheap. This specifically is the Rogue Monster Light version, so for their 5/8 inch holes. And this is the short arm. So the 35-inch arm. With this setup, you're looking at $975 right out of the gate before taxes and shipping. So after shipping and taxes, you're looking at a little over $1,000, which is pretty substantial. It's not a cheap piece of equipment. It's not a small chunk of change. And in my experience, there's a lot of different lever arms out there. There's a lot of cheaper ones. Personally, I think they are worth it. Again, we're going to get into all my pros and cons, but just kind of saying right out of the gate, in my experience, they are one of the most versatile and useful pieces of equipment that I have purchased for my garage gym. I absolutely love them, but I will say that they are not great on their own. In order to fully and properly utilize them, they require a lot of different accessories and attachments. And that's one of the biggest cons of the lever arms and of lever arms in general, not just this, the 50 cal system, the Rogues. In general, lever arms, in my opinion, by themselves are not worth it. If you're going to get lever arms, in order for them to be fully useful, you have to get a few different accessories, which I'll kind of cover loosely in this video. But that's the biggest thing about them, is if you're just getting the lever arms, you're probably not going to be super happy with them unless you're doing a lot of like collegiate stuff where they use them for, I don't know what, like the thing where you see them with the band attached to it and they're like wah and wah. I don't know. Unless you're doing that kind of stuff, these are not super useful as they come. But again, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about how I modify them, all the different accessories that I have purchased specifically for them in order to make them one of the most versatile and useful pieces of equipment that I own. Getting on to another very common question that I am often asked about these is, one, because they're Rogue, will they fit on something like a Rep Fitness rack or a Titan Fitness rack? And if they do, how well do they fit? So for those of you that have or that know of Rep Fitness, their uprights are a metric measurement versus Rogues are standard, which might not mean anything to a lot of you out there. But basically, Rogues are 3x3 inches, whereas Rep Fitness, being metric, come in at just a hair under 3x3 inches. They're like 2.9 something inches, I believe. I don't have the number on me off, and I don't know it offhand. But basically, that's to say that Rep Fitness uprights are just a hair smaller. Same thing for Titan Fitness, because they're made overseas in China. They're just a hair smaller than Rogue Fitness uprights. Now, with that being said, these do fit on, obviously, Rep Fitness, and I know and have seen pictures of them on Titan Fitness racks. So there, you don't have to worry about that there. They will fit just fine. They work great. I've used them for over a year on this rack without any major issues. However, because the uprights are a little bit smaller in kind of width, diameter, whatever you want to call it, because they're a little bit smaller than a Rogue upright, there is going to be a little bit of extra kind of slop and play in these, side to side, front to back, that kind of stuff. It is going to be a little bit of play. Now, again, in my experience over the past year of using these, it's not enough to really make a huge difference. It's never been an issue for me. However, I have recently gone through and I modified them a little bit in order to reduce and eliminate almost all of that play completely. So that'll be a separate video on its own. I don't want to make this one too long and go into too much detail and that kind of stuff, but just know that if you have a Rep Fitness or a Titan Fitness rack and you want to get these and you want to make sure that they fit as best as possible, there is a way to do it, and it's super simple, and it's actually super cheap as well. So like I said, I'll do a separate video on that if it's already out. Maybe I'll remember to link it in the cards up above. So that's a big question that I often get asked is, will they fit? Yes, they will. How well do they fit? Fairly well, perfectly if you want to modify them a little bit. Moving on from there, let's talk a little bit about the trolley system itself. The trolley system, I'll say this right out of the gate, is a pain in the ass to adjust. And I don't mean by moving it up and down the rack, I mean by when you're initially going through setting this thing up on the rack and ensuring that everything is fit properly. The trolley is a nightmare, or not necessarily a nightmare, but it's a pain in the butt to adjust and get it set properly so that it moves and glides up and down the rack smoothly. The reason for that is because, one, if you don't set it up right, then it's going to be super bindy on the rack, or you're going to be, or it's going to be super sloppy and loose on the rack, but it's easy to move up and down. So it's kind of one of those things where you have to balance out and play with all of these different bolts. There's some set screws on here as well. The instructions cover the full thing in detail, but you kind of have to go through and play around with these bolts once it's kind of set up until you get it to a point where you're balancing the ability to move it up and down with how much extra play and slop it has. Hopefully that makes sense. So basically, when you're getting it all set up, it's a pain in the butt and it takes a little bit of time to get it right. And then once you get one right, you gotta go over and do the other one. The entire build, or just kind of like set up, initial setup process is super easy. It comes with detailed instructions, tells you everything you need, and it works. It's really quick and easy to do. But again, getting it fine-tuned and adjusted to where it glides up and down your rack really smoothly, and it doesn't have too much play in it, takes a bit of time and is a bit of a pain. Going on from there, I do actually want to talk a little bit about an issue that I had initially with my lever arms when I first got them in, basically a little over a year ago. An issue that I initially had was that they arrived slightly twisted to the point where I couldn't take J-cups, I couldn't take these, and I physically could not go through and install them onto the lever arms. I couldn't do that with my J-cups. It wasn't visually apparent, but when I went and tried to attach attachments to them, they would not go. With that initial issue, I was very quick to reach out to Rogue. I sent customer service an email, I sent in a few pictures, and before the end of that day, they had another set of lever arms shipped out and on their way to me at no cost. They didn't even ask for the old ones returned, they just sent out a whole new pair. So that's not exactly an issue per se, but it's something to kind of mention. And again, mad props to Rogue's customer service team for being so on it. Within 3-4 hours of me sending in an email and some pictures and stuff, they had new ones on their way. So yeah, I was really happy with that. They came in about 3 days and I got them replaced and there were no more issues. Now let's go into, again, talking a little bit more about some of the pros and cons of this with regards to what a lot of complaints that I often see. And that's, first off, let's talk about the resistance profile. We'll get into this a little bit more later, but the resistance profile, and this is one of the reasons why I was saying that by themselves, I do not recommend them, because the resistance profile is very poor. If you guys know anything about a lever, when it's in this kind of vertical hanging position, no matter what you put, I could put a 45-pound plate on the bottom here. I could load a 45-pound plate on there, and I could still, with one finger, do that. I could still move it really easily, even if there was a 45-pound plate on here. And that's because of the nature of a lever. The way it works, a very quick high-level kind of physics lesson here. The way a lever works is as it gets closer and closer to parallel with the floor, so to this position here, the more of the weight that is loaded here becomes active. So a good way to think about it is, if this is a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being completely vertical, super light, no weight here, 10 being right here. This is the maximum amount of weight that you're going to feel. As you go back up, again, it starts to decrease in weight. So again, go 0 to 10, 10 back to 0. That's kind of that whole principle of a lever. And that's what I mean when I say that the resistance profile is very poor when they're by themselves. The way that I've found in order to get by that and actually make them useful and extremely useful is by adding on different attachments such as spotter arms and then changing where and how you load the lever arms themselves. So I'll throw up some videos of different variations that I've done so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But by utilizing spotter arms on the lever arms, I'm able to load that parallel to the floor position right out of the gate with whatever movement I'm trying to perform, which means that I'm able to better utilize a nice consistent resistance curve. Again, hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions about it, let me know down below in the comment section. Getting into what I personally believe are some of the accessories that are absolutely needed in order to really utilize the lever arms to their fullest capacity. I'm just gonna kind of quickly list out what I'm using, and I'll have them all linked down below in the description if you wanna check any of them out specifically. But first and foremost, safety spotter arms. I have specifically the Rogue SML-24, whatever their Monster Light safety spotter arms are. And then on top of that, I've got 2 sets of weight horns, potentially 3 if you really want to go crazy, but 2 at a bare minimum. Both of mine are from CFT Performance. One is a 12-inch long weight horn with dual ends, so they have the option to have like dual 5/8 inch ends or dual 1 inch, 5/8 inch and 1 inch, whatever you need. Mine personally are 5/8 and 1 inch ends. And the reason for that is so that I can attach carabiners to the opposite end that's not attached to the rack or to the lever arms or whatever it may be, so that I can attach handles for different types of variations and movements. And then the second set of weight horns is just a standard 9-inch set of weight horns. Now, the reason I like the CFT Performance ones is one, because they have that dual end option, which I think I was actually the first one to request that, and it went over so well that he added the option to the website. Just kind of patting myself on the back there. But anyway, because they have that dual end option, which is extremely awesome for all the different variations you can use them for. And the second reason is because they only have a single bolt in order to secure them. Meaning if you take a quick look at these 2 different weight horns that I have on here, this one is from Titan Fitness. This is pretty much your typical standard weight horn. It's got 2 bolts in order to secure it to your rack, to the lever arm, to whatever you may need. Whereas the CFT one, it only requires a single bolt. And I've actually modified this a little bit so that I can fit this through the rubber bumper here. But that's a whole different video in and of itself. But the nicest thing about the CFT ones is that they only require a single bolt in order to secure them to whatever you're attaching them to, which makes them a lot more useful in terms of where you can secure them on the safety spotter arms, on your lever arms, on your rack, whatever it may be. So those are kind of the 3 things that, in my personal opinion, at a bare minimum you need in order to really utilize these to their fullest potential. Getting into a couple other accessories that are extremely nice to have, but not necessarily 100% needed. First off would be a 3rd weight horn, and I'm actually potentially going to be picking up another 9-inch CFT weight horn to replace this one. Potentially, we'll see, maybe in the future, I'm not quite sure yet. But that's the first thing that I would recommend. Second is from a completely different company called Aperture Engineering, and they're basically these guards that go on the very end of the spotter arms in order to protect your rack or whatever it may be from being damaged. So basically on the end of the spotter arms, you can see here, it's a piece of UHMW that's been printed, 3D printed in order to specifically fit these spotter arms. These basically help protect the rack whenever you're using these in a lot of different various positions and variations. And these are something that I highly recommend picking up if you at all are concerned about potentially damaging and dinging up your rack or your floors or whatever it may be, even just to kind of protect yourself from scratching or dinging yourself on the ends of those safety spotter arms. So those again are from Aperture Engineering. As I said before, I'll have everything linked down below in the description. Moving on, let's talk a little bit about the handles that come with the lever arms. So you may notice that I don't even have them on here. You probably can't see them. They're above me right now on my rack. In my opinion, the handles are just okay. They're extremely heavy. They're kind of annoying and difficult to get on and off. In order to secure them to the lever arms, you have to use a hitch pin. It's just in general they're kind of cumbersome and I don't really like them. Starting out, testing a lot of stuff out, they're great. I mean, just kind of as a base, if you just want to try out a few different things, they work really well. I personally don't find them very useful, and I almost never use them now that I've got the setup that I have. Starting out, they were fine. They worked okay. I was able to utilize them okay for the majority of stuff, but again, in my experience, they didn't fit my body structure, my body type very well. The handle positions were too far in to really be super useful. The weight horn position of the plate was just kind of too far in as well to really take advantage of the lever and how it was loading. And overall, I just personally don't find them to be very useful. They actually pretty much just live on top of my rack, and they just serve as like a multi-grip pull-up bar attachment. And occasionally I might pull them down and attach them to my safety so that I can do things like dips. In general though, they're kind of thumbs down. Not a big fan of them. Now on to kind of the last thing that I'm gonna cover is another big complaint that I often hear people talk about, and that's the setup times. So the biggest complaint and the most frequent complaint that I often see with people is that they take too long to set up, especially a lot of the different types of variations that I've created utilizing all these different accessories and attachments. And I'll start off by saying that yes, when you're figuring out what you want to do, when you're figuring out variations that work for you, for your setup, for your equipment, yes, it is going to take time. However, once you've identified a specific movement, a specific setup that you like, what I recommend doing is taking some pictures, taking notes. Note maybe where it is on the rack specifically that you have the lever arm set to, what hold position. I personally, you may be able to see behind me here, my rack is covered in chalk marks. I personally will take, once I find a spot that I like my lever arm set to for a specific movement, I'll go and mark my rack with a bit of chalk. And then also in my logbook, because I log all my workouts, I will write down specific notes like hold position 25, different things like that. And I will note that so that I'm able to very quickly and easily go back to whatever variation and setup that I've identified as being useful. And once I've kind of gone through that whole initial process, that's when it's time to actually use them. So for me, when I go through and I kind of test out different variations, I'll do that on days that I'm not working out or at times that I'm not working out. That way it doesn't interfere with my workout. Then when it comes time to actually utilize those, I have all my notes. I have everything set up and ready to go. So I'm able to basically go through and adjust the lever arms extremely quickly. For the majority of my variations, it takes no more than 30 to 45 seconds per arm to set them up. So in general, the setup times become a non-issue in my experience, especially if you do them during your rest periods of prior exercises. So like you do a set of something, you come over, you set one lever arm up. You go do another set, you come back, set the other lever arm up. And then you're pretty much ready to go. So it pretty much completely eliminates that whole complaint of setup times being an issue. And that's my experience. So yeah, that's pretty much all of the kind of highs and lows of the Rogue 50 cal lever arms. In general, I personally really like them. If there's anything that I missed or I didn't cover that you guys want to know about, let me know down below in the comments section. I will be doing a full kind of series on different lever arm variations that I've created that I really like and enjoy using, as well as going through and showing you guys how I modified these in order to kind of eliminate that slack and that play when I have them attached to my Rep Fitness rack. So those are two videos that are, well, not necessarily two, but those are videos that are going to be coming out soon. So if you guys want to see them when they come out, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe so you can be notified when they go live, maybe ring that little bell. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video. As I said, hopefully you enjoyed. If there's anything I missed, let me know down below in the comment section. If there's anything you want to know specifically about these, let me know as well. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching, and as always, I will see you all in the next one. Bye.